Please welcome the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, and Time's Molly Ball.
Madam Speaker, thank you so much for being with
Molly.
us today. You have a role that I believe is familiar to you from the Congress, the closer. So let's make some news. You were in Europe last week when the Mueller Report finally came out. Did you read it, and what did you think?
Well, I was in Europe on Good Friday for the Good Friday Accords, the 21st anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, which brought peace to Northern Ireland and to Ireland in general. So that was our purpose. On Thursday, the Mueller Report came out, and we were getting reviews from the staff back home and from the committee chairs. What did I think of it? Well, learn more when we landed on Friday, actually. We got here Friday. Learn more then. While we haven't seen it all, while what we have seen has been largely redacted, while what we have seen has omitted the grand jury report, which we expect to see, what we did learn is that the Russians had a systemic overall assault on our electoral system. And what we also did see is that the President of the United States engaged in behavior that was unethical, unscrupulous, and beneath the dignity of the office that he holds. What's surprising about it is that the Republicans seem to have an unlimited appetite for this kind of behavior. And instead of being ashamed of what that report said, they gave their blessing once again to the president. That's what I thought of it so far.
Do you believe the president committed obstruction of justice? Do you believe that in addition to being unethical, the president's behavior was criminal?
That remains to be seen when we see the rest of the report. Now, the administration has said, we'll take a few of you in the room, some leaders and committee chairs, just a few, so that we can convey some less redacted version to you. And we said, no, we're not taking any redaction bath here by reading it in a room with a few of us and then preventing us from having any conversation with other people. The American people deserve the truth. We want them to see what the report says, and we're not falling for some, well, for you leaders, we'll show you, but you can't discuss it with anyone else. This is really a sad day for our country to see that report come out with all of the inconsistencies in it. And over the weekend, I have read and studied as much of it as possible. Last night, we had a conference call with our members. A record number of 177 members were on the phone over a break, a holiday time, holy day, holy season. That's a very large number. When I say conference call by the numbers, 177 members were on the call for 87 minutes. 70 minutes at least of that was listening to the comments of 20 members who called in over and above the report of our 6 very distinguished chairpersons who are well known to all of you. And they made their presentations as to each aspect of the Mueller report and where it is. So this is about being totally free from passion, from prejudice, from politics. It's about the presentation of the facts. And when we have the facts, we'll have a better idea of how we go forward.
Some analysts of the report, or at least what we've seen of it, have described it as an impeachment referral. Do you see it that way?
Well, there are many ways to hold the President of the United States accountable, and the Mueller report sort of led the way to that by not making an indictment. Was the question as, is the president indictable or not? Well, it doesn't matter. What matters is the truth. And the investigations that our committees will conduct will take us down a fact-finding path. And everybody should welcome that. What are the facts? What is interesting about it all is we now see the administration engaged in stonewalling of the facts coming to the American people. They want to sue the Oversight Committee, Elijah Cummings, for making a request for testimony. They want to obstruct any subpoenas that come down for information. So this is a moment in our history. As I say, it's not about politics, it's about patriotism. It's an existential threat, this administration, to our democracy in terms of our Constitution. Article 1 of the legislative branch spelled out in the Constitution the power of oversight over other branches of government, the right to know. Secondly, it's an assault in this week of Earth Week, an assault this administration is on our beautiful environment, this great land that God gave us, as I believe he did. Even if you don't share that belief, you do believe that we have a responsibility to pass it on to future generations, and they are in the mode of degrading it with people with self-aggrandizement as part of their purpose. About I said the Constitution, the beautiful land, who we are as a people, a nation of immigrants, unless you happen to be blessed to be born a Native American, a nation of immigrants. Ronald Reagan, you'd be surprised to know the president I quoted the most during the campaign was Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan talked about the Statue of Liberty as a beacon of hope to the world, and how people in our country, looking back at the Statue of Liberty, remember seeing her for the first time, and how people in other places see her as a beacon of hope. And he said, and I refer you to Ronald Reagan's last speech. Is this a headliner for you in the business? The last speech of Ronald Reagan as President of the United States. And what he talked about was that the fact that the vital force of America's preeminence in the world is every new generation of immigrants who comes to our country. When America fails to recognize that vital force, we will fail to be preeminent in the world. If we close the door to newcomers, we will lose our vitality that keeps America young. Ronald Reagan. President George Herbert Walker Bush, President Bill Clinton, President George W. Bush, President Barack Obama all shared that value of people coming with their hopes, their dreams, their determination to make the future better for the future generations of their families. That hope, optimism, and courage, their American traits in these newcomers, make America more American. So in terms of our Constitution, in terms of our beautiful land, in terms of our from sea to shining sea, in terms of the people, and in terms of our values, where you just have to look at their budget, which is supposed to be a statement of values, and it is not. This is an existential moment, a threat to who we are, what our values are, what our Constitution's ideals are. And so it's an interesting time to review the Mueller report.
Well, what are the next steps? How do you hold the president accountable? And what more do we need to know? I mean, a fair number of your members are saying the facts are laid out here. We already know all that we need to proceed with the constitutional mechanism for holding the president accountable, which is impeachment.
Well, I do believe that all of us in public office, and especially with any additional responsibilities, have a duty to the American people to keep us together. Our founders, for all the good things they gave us guidance, e pluribus unum, from many one. They couldn't imagine how many we would be or how different we would be from each other, but they knew that we had to strive for oneness. I do believe that impeachment is one of the most divisive forces, paths that we could go down to in our country. But if the path of fact-finding takes us there, we have no choice. But we're not there yet. And as I've said in my letter, I said to my members, I say to you, as I said earlier, there are many ways to hold the president accountable. The Congress, the Justice Department may have not decided to use its full power to impeach, to indict. Congress will not be silent in terms of using our constitutional power to find the facts for the American people. But as I say, impeachment is a step that you have to take with this, bringing the American people with you. Again, without prejudice, without passion, without partisanship, but with a presentation of the facts. I keep saying it again and again because That's what it's about. We have to know what the facts are. And there is some, I don't think there's big division in our caucus about this. There are some people who are more eager for impeachment, many more eager to just follow the investigation where it is. 54% of our caucus, 54%, over half of our members are on the 6 committees of jurisdiction. So they'll have a chance to ask their questions to find the facts.
Is it a growing number of members who are
I think it's growing as far, well, you would think so about how it is amplified, but I don't think it's a growing number. Actually, there was a poll that I said by the numbers with the caucus call. Following the caucus call, coming out this morning, having nothing to do with the caucus call, the president's number were like 3756 or something like that, pretty low. The 40s are low, the 30s are below sea level. Then, but at the same poll that said the president is at 37, 48% said no to impeachment, 34% said yes to impeachment. So impeachment is not about yes or no on impeachment. It may be a place that the facts take us. We shouldn't impeach for a political reason, and we shouldn't not impeach for a political reason. So, but I'd rather, instead of having the work of the Congress be consumed by impeachment, we have our committees. I have great confidence in our chairmen. They're top-notch, and the committees and the staff, they'll do their jobs. At the same time, we will do our agenda for the people, lowering health care costs by lowering the cost of prescription drugs, raising paychecks by building the infrastructure of America in a green way, and cleaner government. We already passed H.R. 1, our bill to reduce the role of big money in politics, stop the voter suppression, and the gerrymandering, and passing the Voting Rights Act. We had a full agenda in the first 100 days, which we are very proud of, including passing gun safety bill, Violence Against Women Act, a list that goes on and on. So we really have to do the people's business because their kitchen table concerns are what are our concerns for the people. That's our agenda.
Well, as you know, many of those priorities are not things that the Republicans who control the Senate have any interest in. So 2 questions. Number 1, what is the point of passing all this lovely legislation that's just going to die in the Senate? Well, but number 2, are there areas where you think that you might be able to reach agreement?
Well, I do think that, to your second point, I think in the area of reducing the cost of prescription drugs, the president said he's interested in doing that. He's supposed to be making an announcement tomorrow, I don't know, but in our conversations and at a staff level and in my conversations with him, I think we can find a path to do that. And in terms of infrastructure in a green way, I don't think, that's never really been partisan, except when President Obama put something forward, they weren't as cooperative as it could have been, but a bill was passed, but not as grand as it could have been. But infrastructure, we'll be meeting with the president next week. We come back to talk about what the prospect is for the size in terms of resources and scope of what that might be. So there are 2 that I'm very optimistic we could accomplish, and they are our top 2: lower healthcare costs by reducing the cost of prescription drugs and preserving the pre-existing condition, which the president says he wants to do, building the infrastructure, bigger paychecks by building infrastructure. In terms of the Senate, I quoted Reagan, now I'll quote Lincoln. Public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. Abraham Lincoln. And the fact that we passed the gun safety bill for background checks, 80% of American people support common sense background checks, which we passed. And it's bipartisan. Protecting dreamers, that's popular across the board in our country. We will pass that in the Congress, and that is something I think the Senate has to pay attention to. Violence Against Women Act. I certainly hope that they would pass that without any question. It's long overdue, and it is the right thing for us to do. So I I don't think the House of Representatives should say, we're just staying home because the Senate won't pass something, because the president won't sign it. Well, if that were a monarchy, okay, then we don't have to have a constitution, a bicameral legislature. We can just leave it up to the president. But that's not who we are, and we don't leave it. We never confine ourselves to what might be legislatively possible unless we recognize that the public will weigh in. We just passed in the House the net neutrality legislation, very, very important, especially to young people who understand it so well. Millions of people tuned in. Imagine millions of people tuning in to a session of, with all due respect, C-SPAN committee meeting and then the floor action on it. And they will weigh in on the Senate as well, and we think that public sentiment will help us pass that legislation in the Senate. But if they don't, the public will know, because what we have promised is transparency. This is what it is. This is how you determine how it affects you. Bipartisanship as much as possible. Unity, e pluribus unum. We have to be respectful and try to find as many areas of bipartisanship, find our common ground where we can. We have that responsibility. Stand our ground where we can. That was Thomas Jefferson weighing in. Like a rock where you can't.
Meanwhile, there's a presidential election well underway already. I believe your party has, at last count, 340 candidates. Correct me if I'm wrong, a few. You are obviously a leader of the Democratic Party. Do you have a preference for who should be the nominee in 2020?
Whether it's 20, 21, 22, the number is growing. Any one of them would be a better president than the present occupant of the White House. Any one of them. So I think they're all wonderful. It's up to the public to decide. It's not up to who do I support or anything like that. It's up to the public. As the public sees them present their why. Why are you running? What is your vision for America? What is your priority? What do you know about? Is it climate change? Is it education? Is it disparity of income in our country? Is it gun safety, immigration? Where can you show your knowledge and judgment? Your why, your what, your how. Are you a strategic thinker? You have plans on how to get this done? And most importantly, are you connecting? That's all up here. Are you connecting heart to heart with the American people? I always say to people when they want to run, show your why. Show what you know about, show how you want to get something done. But most importantly, you must connect with the American people. I think all of them have that capability. The American people will be the judge. I myself am focused on winning the House again for the Democrats, and I intend to have that accomplished by this year. In a very gerrymandered, voter-suppressed arena, we net gained 40 seats in the last election. That was remarkable. We have over 65 new members of Congress. They're fantastic, beautifully diverse. Our caucus is 60% women, people of color, LGBTQ. That is an applause line. And they're so remarkable, and we recognize the talent that they bring. And just, I don't know if anybody in here remembers, but some of you have maybe read in the history books, when the Watergate babies came to Washington in 1974, that was considered the most transformative class, a big class, all coming in, newcomers, some had never been involved in politics, sound familiar. And not one of them, in the first year of office, not one of them was a chair of a subcommittee, had a gavel. 18 members of this new freshman class have a gavel, 10 women, 8 men. That means they're chairs of 18 subcommittees of the House. That's a very, very big deal. Women in total have 30-some subcommittees. We have women at the top, Maxine Waters, a long list of women chairing full committees as well. So and people of color and LGBTQ sit at the table of the full committee chairs. So we're very proud of our diversity. And by November, Halloween or the day after, we intend to have won the election for next year by showing the strength, the official strength of these members, that they're present in their communities, that they connect with their constituents on the official side. On the political side, and make sure that from a mobilization standpoint, they own the ground, not yielding one grain of sand in terms of get out the vote. In terms of money, in order to afford all of this, we want to make sure they're fortified to the nth degree. And in terms of message, like a laser jackhammer, very specific for the people, kitchen table issues. And so, if you were thinking as a Republican of running for Congress and your president was in the 40s, and your incumbent was so strong, you might think about putting it off a while. So we'll have the A team, they won't. And to the members of Congress who are there now, the Republicans, for some of them, we have other plans for them. We want to tell them that you've had an easy ride, by and large. You've been with the president every step of the way. You're going to have a race. It's going to cost you some resources that you're not used to raising and spending. And you might lose, or you might win. But if you win, you're going to be serving in the minority. And so maybe you'd like to teach at the university or something like that. So we intend to not only win, but to increase our number. And we want to get it all done by this year so that we can win the Senate and take back the House for the American people, not only the House and the Senate, but the White House. I think this election is an existential one for our country. We must win the White House.
That was
is this
also
a political arena? Or, I don't know. Are we allowed to talk politics here? Sorry.
This is your second speakership, the first Speaker of the House since Sam Rayburn to take it back after a hiatus. How is it different? How are you different? How is the game different from your first time around?
Well, how I'm different is that I think it's really important. Last time I was really busy, and it was wonderful, and we worked. Well, what's different? Working with President George W. Bush, even though I disagreed with him completely on the war in Iraq, we found our areas of common ground, the biggest energy bill in the history of our country. And then, of course, President Barack Obama, when we went forward with the stimulus bill, the Affordable Care Act, so many other things. That's very different than working with the current White House. Very different. So that's one thing. The other part of it is, from my own personal self, I have, as my friends laugh at me and say, you're uncharacteristically boastful of what you're doing. I said, it's not for me, it's for women. I want women to get out there and say, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I did, and this is how I'm going to move on to the next. I want women to have all the confidence in the world that they should not be impaired by any cultural inhibitor to their singing their own praises or taking credit for what they have done. So I'm sort of liberated and unplugged, if you want, in that regard. But the main thing is that I said it at the beginning, we are at a moment in our history. Our founders said, the times have found us. Our founders, they said that. The times have found us. They were always putting down temporal markers. Now is the time that tries men's souls and women. Even Lincoln, 7 years ago. But Thomas Paine also said, way back when, the times have found us. We think the times have found us, and you, and you. The times have found us. Not that we elevate ourselves to the stature of our founders or Lincoln, but the urgency of the challenge of now is something so big, as Mr. Cummings, Elijah Cummings, the chair of the Oversight Committee, has said, it is our destiny. It is our destiny to make this fight for our country, for our Constitution, for our people, who we are as a people, for our beautiful patrimonial land that God gave us, and for our values that are viewed around the world. So this is nothing short of an existential threat to who we are and who we are perceived to be throughout the world. But what's more important is what it means in the everyday lives of America's working families. And while we have many differences in our party, and that's the beauty of it, I say our diversity is our strength, our unity is our power. And as we use our leverage, it's always something that unifies us. What unifies us is our concern for America's working families. That is our priority. That is the imperative that guides the House Democratic Caucus. And so what's different is a different respect for governance in this administration versus even the George Bush or the President George Bush or President Barack Obama administrations.
One last question. You talk about inspiring, empowering women. Women finally broke 100 in the Congress after this past election. People sometimes ask Ruth Bader Ginsburg how many women would be enough on the Supreme Court, and she says 9.
Why not? They've had 9 men a long time, right?
How many women would be enough in the U.S. Congress, do you think?
Well, right now, we made a decision. When I went to Congress, there were 23 women, 12 Democrats, 11 Republicans. We made a decision. We said, what are we talking about here? 435 people, 23 women. We made a decision on our side that we would always increase our number in the elections to come. Right now, there are 116 women in the House of Representatives, 91 Democrats and 15 Republicans. I wish them more success if they make a decision to do so, but we made that decision. And that's 40% of the House Democrats are women. We certainly want more, but we are lifting the average of all of Congress. The Senate Democrats are in good shape too, but we all have to do more. Nothing, I'll close, is it over? Yeah, nothing is more wholesome for America than the increased participation of women in politics and government, and actually everything. Corporate America, the military, the academic world, you name it. But I'm just talking about politics and government right now. Nothing is more wholesome than increased participation of women. And I promise you, I guarantee you this, if we reduce the role of money in politics and increase the level of civility in politics, we'll have many more women in politics. But women took matters into their own hands with the march. They marched. It wasn't political. It was organic. It was spontaneous. They marched, then they ran, then women voted, women won, women lead. It's a very exciting thing. Now let us thank Molly Ball for her wonderful moderating of this thing.
Thank you, Speaker Pelosi. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.